Imagine you're sitting inside a room in a meeting and you're different from everyone else. Maybe because you're the only woman there, you think differently. Maybe you're the quietest person at the table and everyone else seems louder, more sure of themselves, more comfortable taking up space. And somewhere back in your mind, some thoughts showing up. Maybe I don't really belong here. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm just not built to lead. And I want to talk about that today because I lived inside those thoughts for years. For most of my career, it was different. So I was a woman working mostly with men in environments that were competitive and ego-driven. The voices around me were always louder than mine, and I'm a generally quiet and introverted person. And for a long time, I believed that it was a disadvantage. I looked at the people who were leading, the confident, loud, the one who talked fast, and I thought, well, maybe that's what a leader is supposed to look like. And since that wasn't me, and I didn't look like that, I assumed that maybe, I wasn't a leadership material. And I thought my quietness was something I needed to fix. Something did happen, though. Something happened that slowly started to change how I thought about myself. So I was in a leadership offsite, and during that offsite, I was doing what I always did, mostly listening, mostly quiet. But in one of the sessions, I said something that I was actually thinking about. I shared a perspective. It was a different perspective than everyone else in the room. And I watched the people in the room. People turned and looked at me, and I could see something on their faces. They were, first of all, surprised to hear me talk, and some of them were impressed at the same time. And after that meeting, one of the executives came to me, and he told me he really valued my perspective, and he wanted to hear more from me. And after that meeting, it didn't stop there. Every time I came to the headquarters, I met with that executive. And what I understood only later, that it wasn't in spite of being different that he noticed it. It was because I was different. I wasn't adding another loud or similar voice to the room. The room was already full of loud voices. I was adding something the room didn't already have. And here is my take. And it's one thing that I always say to women and leaders that I coach. A lot of times we walk around convinced that our difference is being held against us, that being the only woman, or being the quiet one, or being the one who thinks differently is the reason that you're not getting ahead. But it's actually the opposite. So when you're different, you bring a perspective that no one else in the room can bring. And this is actually an advantage. It's not a liability. A room full of people who all think the same doesn't need another person to think the same. It needs you. And the difference is not the thing to apologize for, it's your edge. And let me give you another example, because I've also seen it from the other side as a leader watching a whole room. In one of the companies I worked for, a lot of people came from the same previous company. So one person brought in someone they used to work with, and that person brought in someone else, and so forth. And it became this tight-knit group of people who had all worked together before. And honestly, there are a lot of nice things about it. When you hire people you already know and trust, you get great atmosphere, you great collaboration. It's very easy. The trust is already there. However, there is also a downside. And it took me a while to see it clearly, because all those people thought the same way. There was almost no diversity of thought in the room. And when everyone thinks alike, it's really hard to innovate. Because you cannot come up with new ideas when every single person is started from the same place and nodding at the same things. And what I learned is that the magic doesn't happen in comfortable agreement. It actually happens in heated conversations. It happens when someone in the room actually disagrees with you. And it's not easy and not comfortable, right? For me, for years, I used to feel very uncomfortable in those moments because I don't like conflict. And many of us don't. But I understood that the argument and different opinions, and the person who says, wait, I see it completely differently, this is where the innovation really comes from. And you just have to know how to hold that kind of conversation so it stays about the ideas and not about the people or the ego. So when you're a different voice in the room and it creates a little friction, I want you to reframe what the friction means. It doesn't mean that you're wrong or difficult or that you don't fit. A lot of time it means that you are the one bringing the team the exact thing it was missing. And here is what I see so much and so often. Women try to lead, and a lot of women, not all of them, but a lot of them, and I used to be that way, try to lead copying the people who already have the power. So we think we have to be louder, faster, more aggressive, more like the stereotype of a leader. So we spend all our energy trying to become a copy of someone else, but it's usually a weaker copy of someone else, instead of becoming the stronger version of ourselves. So if you are introverted, if you're quiet, or if you like to think before you speak, that copying game is exhausting, and you will always lose it because you're competing on someone else's terms. Does it sound familiar to you? I used to try to be someone else, and I'll tell you, it doesn't work. But what do you actually do with this? Because I know the hardest part is not believing, it's actually doing it. And I wanted to share a few things that helped me, especially as an introvert and as a woman in rooms full of men. First, stop trying to be someone you're not. Whether it's the loudest person in the room, the most aggressive one, the most assertive one, whatever it may be. That was never going to be your strength. And it doesn't need to be. Your value is not in your volume. Your value is in your perspective. Second thing, get clear on what your difference actually is. What do you see that other people miss? Maybe you're the one thinking about the long-term risk while everyone else is excited about the shiny thing. Or maybe you're the one who notices the person on the team who is quietly struggling. Maybe you ask the question no one else is willing to ask. This is your angle. And think about meetings where you didn't say much and later on maybe you were frustrated that you haven't said anything. And think about what were the things that you wanted to say and what was the value in that and what was the other and different perspective that you would have brought to the conversation. And try next time. Third, if speaking up on the spot is hard for you, and I know it can be difficult because it was also difficult for me, especially in rooms with a lot of loud people who a lot of times speak on top of one another. Prepare one point before the meeting. Just one point. And you don't have to talk most of the time. You don't have to talk all the time. You just need to say the one thing that only you would say. Because as introverts, we don't need to speak more. We need to make the moments we speak count. And even if you don't feel comfortable to speak in the meeting, don't beat yourself up. It's okay. It takes some time and practice. Maybe ask for help. Maybe ask for an ally, someone who can bring you into the conversation if it's hard for you, or type in the chat if this is a virtual meeting, or use the raise hand feature that can help. And even if you didn't do all of that, still that's okay. You can always try to write your perspective in Slack or in an email or another written form, or maybe have a conversation after the meeting. Sometimes for us introverts, it's easier to speak in a smaller setting, maybe one-on-one, rather than in a group setting. And number 4, if your perspective creates some kind of conflict or disagreement or friction, it's okay. So first of all, don't try to smooth it over. Don't try to apologize. Just stay with it. I know it's hard. It's not easy to be in a conflict. It's not easy when you say something and it creates friction. But keep it about your thoughts and ideas and not about the person. So if someone is challenging you, ask them what they are actually seeing. Be curious about their perspective. The best way to challenge people is by asking questions, not arguing with them. And let your 2 point of views, or maybe more point of views, sharpen each other. If handled well, the friction is not a problem to manage away. It's actually where the better answer comes from. And number 5, watch what happens. Because the first time you share perspective only you have, and you see how people react. So maybe it's like what happened to me, like how executives reacted to me. You see something shifts. Then you stop thinking or asking yourself whether you belong, and you start realizing that you're actually bringing value, and you bring a perspective that they need, and they needed that all along. And if you felt like the odd one at work, if you thought that your difference, like whether it's quietness or something else, is something that you need to hide, if you're tired to shrink yourself in order to fit a mold that was never built for you, I really want you to hear this. The thing you think is holding you back might be the most valuable thing you bring to the table. And I wanted to encourage you to stop waiting to become someone else's version of a leader. Start leading as yourself. And this week, find one meeting and say the one thing that only you would say. Then notice what happens. And if any of what I said today resonate with you, I would love to hear about it. Send me a message and tell me about a time your difference turned out to be your edge. And this is my take on the conversation I had earlier this week with Marina Naomi Smolyanov, who does exactly this inside of one of the biggest healthcare systems in the world. And if you haven't heard a full conversation with Marina yet, I want to encourage you to listen. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the episode. I hope it was valuable for you. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcasting platform and share it with any woman who needs to hear it. And I'll see you next week. Bye.